From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView Podcast.
All right, and welcome to this week's episode of the DuView Podcast. I am your host, Du, a.k.a. Ryan Dumont, and I am joined this week by the head coach of the Cony football team here in Augusta, Maine, Coach and or Mr., depending on where you had him, BL Lippert. Coach Lippert, BL, thank you for coming on. Do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent. And as you know, folks know, we're quickly approaching fall here. Summer's on its way out, and we will be able to see some high school football games again here by the way things are going. So it must be a welcome change in comparison to last year. So how was that? You know, definitely an adjustment for folks on the football side. I'm sure you and the boys are more than ready to get back on the field.
Yeah, last fall was really a nightmare, to be quite honest. And, you know, the anticipation of perhaps having a season and then maybe we weren't going to. Then the MPA agreed to allow us to do it, only to be told by other agencies within the state that we couldn't. Just a roller coaster that, I wish we could have avoided, but I think people did the best they could to give us a season. It just didn't work out. Same thing for wrestling, I suppose, as we look at the winter seasons. And once we got to the spring, everything went pretty smoothly, and hopefully that continues into the fall.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's like people still kind of sitting on their hands a little bit with the Delta variant coming around. But I'm fingers crossed, and there's nothing more than I'd like to see than the lights on Friday night, and being able to sit up on the hill and watch a game because, I mean, it was just a fun thing to do in high school, but now even out, it's, fun to go back, run into some people you may not have seen in a while and still root for your school, so to speak. So
yeah, it's a big community event. Whether you like football, don't like football, know any players, or even if you don't know any players, you know the uniform, you know some of the tradition, and I think that's what people look forward to. And not having that last fall was really kind of a gap in people's social life to a degree. And
for a lot of folks, I'm sure yourself and the other, coaches, I mean, because that's a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
And the players and
I was able to play more golf. I don't really play much golf in the fall ever, so I was in kind of a cranky mood because we didn't have a season, and whenever I play golf, I get even crankier. So I would say last fall was stressful. We had in teaching, as you know, we had kids online. It was just a long year for everyone. And it pales in comparison to people that are getting the virus and dying. I understand that, but just from a everyday standpoint.
For the rest of us.
Yeah, stressful year.
Yeah,
so hopefully,
most definitely.
Hopefully that changes.
Fingers crossed. Like I said, nothing more than I like to see lights on, sound, TJ booming over the the loudspeaker there. So, yeah, nothing more than really want for this season than that. But prior to, this year, way prior, I guess you could say, for you growing up, you're an Augusta born and raised type guy too, correct?
Yeah, I was born in Augusta in 1981, went all the way through school here at Cony, graduated in 2000, so benefited from just great teachers, coaches, facilities, fields, just really benefited from everything Augusta had to offer, and moved away, went to college for 4 years, and then lived in Portland for 6 years after that, and have been back in Augusta now. I just turned 40 last week, so roughly 30 of my 40 years have been in Augusta, and it's it's a good place to raise a family, and excited to be back.
Right, because you got two young boys yourself.
Yeah, two young boys that are one turns 10 today.
Wow!
And the other
Happy birthday!
Yeah, the other one's 7. So they're growing fast. So life comes at you fast, Ryan. So be prepared.
Yeah. So everybody's told me. So you've told me. John's told me. Everybody's like, get ready because it goes quick.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, once you become an adult, start paying bills and all that stuff, you look up and you're like, okay, I'm 30 now. I'm 40, and
where'd the time go?
Yeah, it goes by fast. And everyone warned me of that too, and I didn't really believe it. But now that I'm on the other side of 40, I'm like, whew, that went pretty quick.
Yeah. So thinking back, when did you first start playing football yourself?
Yeah, so in Augusta, when I was growing up, nobody played until third grade.
Okay.
So the grades 3, 4, and 5 were flag football then, and then you got into tackle. So now we offer actually pre-K and K, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So for us, it was just we had to wait till third grade. I grew up around it. My dad coached for 19 years while I was growing up, so I was around it my whole life. But I didn't play until third grade, and it was flag. And my first coach was Bob Wing, who used to own American Awards. Sadly, a couple of years ago, passed away. His son Justin was a great friend of mine, and so they were looking for a coach. And Bob played running back at Cony in the 70s, so I was great, and we had a blast. And it was competitive, but it was probably I would guess 4 teams of probably 15 guys playing in that age group, and it was a ton of kids and just a lot of fun.
Yep. So Bob Wing, Bob was a great guy. Yeah, a good buddy of my dad's. My dad when we lived in Farmingdale for a short stint, was president of Little League down there, Halldale Little League.
Sure, yeah.
And so he was always, great guy when it comes to getting awards done, any of that type of stuff, and just like being a good guy, member of the community in general too.
Yeah, no, he was a great guy. Like I said, his friend was a great friend of mine, so we used to go over to his house. I remember going to his house to watch Mike Tyson fight again. So back when HBO pay-per-view, and Mr. Wing would always get the big fights, and I think it was the night that Evander Holyfield
Lost
bit Mike
his ear.
Tyson.
Yeah.
Oh, no, man, Mike Tyson bit Holyfield.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember we were like watching that. I was probably 13, on a Saturday night at midnight. We're like, what is going on? He's jumping around. So he always, he had the pool, he had all the fun stuff, and a fast car, and Mr. Wing was just who he was.
He was the
and
guy.
He
right?
was
Yeah,
just a good dude. So when he died, it was really sad for the family. And Justin, his son, is now taking over at American Awards. I just got awards from him for a couple
awesome.
camps I run in the summer. So it's been in the family, and he was my first coach. So definitely got things off on the right foot because he was a fun guy to play for.
Fun guy to play for. And was there anything else just kept it enjoyable? Also learned a few things. I know when you're in third grade, you try to teach the young kids a little bit along the way, but it's different than coaching high school. So
yeah, no, he made everything fun. I mean, he was certainly competitive and wanted to win. And in third grade, we were really bad because we were mostly third graders. His son, me, a couple other guys. And by the time we were in fifth grade, we were the oldest group, and I think we went undefeated and kind of won the league, so to speak. But for him, it was just having fun and getting kids interested in playing football because at that age, some parents are a little bit leery of football, so that's why it was flag, and quite frankly, why I've pushed for more flag football at the younger
youth.
levels for us here now. Parents can be rightfully concerned, concussions and things they don't
CTE,
understand.
whatever,
And so I think, for the longer you can hold out without having tackle, the better. But that's a debate going on in a lot of communities around the state and around the country, to be quite honest. So, he made it fun and made me want to play football, beyond that. And that's really the goal of any youth coach.
Right. And still focusing on football for a minute, your dad played too, correct? He played in college?
Yeah, so my dad went to Ellsworth High School where they did not have football. So
Okay.
he actually was going to go to the University of Georgia and walk on to play baseball. Got there in August, probably wanted to get away from his parents and get down to campus, and saw football for the first time and said, I'm going to walk. So he walked on to the Georgia football team, University of Georgia, Vince Dooley, number 3 team in the country. They used to have freshman teams back then. So he made the freshman team. There were 45 freshmen. They played outside linebacker, and then after their freshman year was when they would redshirt. So they redshirted 41 of the 45 freshmen. And of course, he thought he shouldn't have been redshirted, got a little mad, and transferred to Maine, and never really played football again. But that was his experience with football. And I grew up around it. I think we had the first satellite dish in the city of Augusta. It was like ESPN size, put it in the ground, not attached to your house.
In the backyard.
It was in the backyard. And it was huge. I would say that thing was probably 15 feet across in diameter. And, we could watch college football games. So he was just a huge college football fan. So we might have been the first ones in Augusta legitimately to have that. And then I remember when I was in high school, they couldn't figure out how to get the pole out of the ground. It was down 15 feet. So it was quite an undertaking. I don't remember them installing it, but I remember them taking it out.
Trying to take it out.
It was crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, and then again, being around that, you're through your youth and whatever obviously has effects, for whatever sport you play. My dad, huge just sports guy in general, right, was very much more so rooted in the old, the originals, your baseball, basketball, football. And, when I came along and started playing soccer through, a monkey wrench
in that,
but he had to learn a new game. And now, I mean, he runs the Cara fields and whatever else, up there. But it's interesting to see how our parents, if your dad's a big football guy, odds are you're gonna, be a football guy, right? And there's nothing wrong with that by any means, because I'd run into your dad, at Planet Fitness or wherever from time to time, Cony football, something like that. So it's cool to see, generationally, that play out.
Yeah, and it's funny. My 2 sons, so neither one of them play football, so it's kind of interesting. We'll see
what's gonna happen the next Lippert generation of.
I don't know.
athlete.
We'll see. Maybe he's the older one. Case is doing judo, which I knew nothing about. Which is kind of wrestling, with
mixed martial arts.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. I bring him over to Bucher a couple nights a week, and and I know nothing about it, so I'm learning along with it, like your dad had to with soccer. So it's been kind of fun. The Olympics were just on, so I recorded that and showed him the highest level of judo. So you do whatever your kids want to do. Number one thing is so to be happy.
There's so many options now.
Oh yeah.
Even compared to when I was younger, you were younger. There are even more they're talking about eventually high school ultimate frisbee and high school rugby.
If they eventually have esports at Cony now, Case might be the first All-American at Cony. I'm telling you, he plays video games like you wouldn't believe. So.
Scoville will have that locked down.
Yes, absolutely. So there's just so much to do and so many choices, and for like you said earlier, traditional sports, your footballs and soccers of the world, like now the numbers are down for a lot of those schools because kids have just a multitude of options. And while it's a football coach, that's, like something you lament. I ultimately want kids to do whatever they, find fun, and whether that's ultimate frisbee or, like you said, esports, it's just having options is awesome.
Right. Yeah. Most definitely. You can't have enough options. And speaking of options yourself, you were a baseball guy too. You played.
Yeah. So I played football and baseball. I played basketball growing up, and in high school I didn't. I should have. I regret it. Probably one of my biggest life regrets was not playing basketball. But I played football and baseball all the way through college, and honestly, I had much more success as a team playing baseball. Augusta, Cony baseball was really, really good in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up and playing, and played for several state championships, and love baseball. Still love baseball. I watch the Yankees every single night, the Red Sox every single night. But I like coaching football a little bit more. I feel like you can impact the game a little more as a football coach. So I haven't coached a ton of baseball. A little bit of Legion back in the late 2008, 2009. But really enjoy coaching football. So two sports I love. I love all sports, to be quite frank with you. But those two are two I played for a really long time, and obviously still have a deep connection with now.
Were you on the Little League? Augusta had a really good Little League. Were you part of that?
So I was on the Babe Ruth team in 1997.
Okay, Babe Ruth. Yep.
Yeah. So we went to the Babe Ruth World Series in 1997 in Longview, Washington. The first team from the state of Maine to win the regional, New England regionals. We were down in Brattleboro, Vermont. So that was quite an experience. We were 15 years old and flew across the country, little travel suits, and of course Augusta, in true Augusta fashion, they raised a ton of money, and
the whole community was behind you. Yeah,
it was great, and so something that all of us we just had a 20th reunion, I guess in 2017, and played a softball game against the 2007 team that did the same thing 10 years after we did. So a lot of friendships that are still there. You might not see them or talk to them on a monthly basis, but as soon as you reconnect, those memories come flooding back, and something really left an impression on me, and maybe really want to coach, to be quite honest.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I mean, like, to have those again, I'd consider that for you one of those defining moments in your life. It's just you get to go off, you get to go, with a group, and you still connect with those. You make such a deep connection because it's such a unique experience.
Yeah, and then nowadays I've got an old school mentality. So like I see these teams that are traveling from Maine to go to national tournaments, but they didn't earn their way there. They just play AAU and have enough money, and they go buy their way into the AAU basketball or baseball or soccer. And so for us, you had to win. You had to win the districts that were here in Augusta.
All the way.
Yeah, had to win the states and had to win the New England regional. So I felt like there was a little bit more like to that, because if you lost, you were done. And so you couldn't just say, well, we're going to fly to the Nationals and put a team in. You had to earn your way there. So there were 8 teams at the World Series, and we came in 4th. Which was just amazing experience to travel out there and play against some of the best players in the country.
Oh, most definitely. And that's what like you and I both traveled to play sports. I did it with soccer. We went down to we were in Bowdoin College, and a lot of teams actually came up to play us, and we had a tournament. Vermont teams, Massachusetts teams, New York teams, and I mean we got trounced. You go out of you have to remember, you get out of Maine, and there's a lot of people.
So we find that out with kids that go on to play college football, and they're like, geez, coach, I showed up on campus and there were some really good kids from Massachusetts and Connecticut, New York. I said, in Maine you were a pretty big deal, but as soon as you head elsewhere,
you cross that border, done.
Yeah, there's some different athletes out there, so it's good for them to experience at a young age too. Sometimes to realize that
you got to realize that
you're probably not going to the pros. If you're a superstar at Cony or even anywhere in the state of Maine, we've had some guys get drafted and play professionally, but it's pretty rare. So you might want to focus on your academics as well.
A little bit more too.
Yeah, that's a tough lesson for some.
Yeah, and so you said obviously went to Cony, graduated. What year did you graduate from
2000.
Cony? 2000 on the dot. Yep. So who was your head coach for the Cony team when you played?
Yeah, so Ralph Peterson was the head coach, who was a longtime social studies teacher in the building like I am now, and he coached track as well. Just a great guy. Lived in Gardner, which was always kind of interesting. The Gardner people would toilet paper his house, the Cony Gardner week, and just a really intelligent guy. Went on to become assistant principal first at Cony, principal at Richmond, and now he's down in New Hampshire. He actually retired from the state of Maine, and now is a principal down in New Hampshire, and commutes back and forth on the weekends to see his family. So a great guy, very just upfront, honest. Told you how it was, and was demanding, certainly with the weight room in the summer and everything, but just someone I have the utmost respect for still to this day. In
Right.
fact, I'm coaching track now, as you know, and I didn't do track in high school, so I had to kind of like learn some of these throwing events on the fly, and we've had some success. But I called him and sent him some videos of our discus thrower as she was getting ready for the States, and he sent me a few pointers, and just someone I know I can rely on to give me advice, whether it's he's super conservative. Mr. Peterson is like as conservative as a person as I know. So when I need to hear a little bit about, why gun control is a bad idea, he's the guy I call. And so he just is one of those people for me that I know I can call at any moment, and he'd drop anything for me, and just a great influence, and really another guy that made me want to become a coach.
Right.
That relationship you have with someone, which, you can get it in the classroom for sure. You can get it at church or in different places. But for me, growing up around it, having those influences as a coach, I was like, if I get a chance to do that, I didn't know if I'd be coaching Little League or
whatever.
Whatever it was. I knew I'd coach someday, and it's maybe been a little bit more than I'd really thought I would be as far as coaching at the high school level. But there's people like Coach Peterson that were a big influence for why I wanted to do it.
Right. And I mean, like, that just creates a good support network, for regardless if you're his player or not, right? And I mean, like, those are the coaches that really, stand out to me, is that you can, not only rely on them when you're on the field or at practice, right? When you're their player for 4 years or however long, right? So like that after, stuff, how good of a relationship have you, cultivated with this person, right? Just like to be able to call and say, hey, I need some pointers on this or this, that, whatever else. I mean, that's a huge bond.
Yeah, and I think about things like, when you're getting married, when you're having a kid, this is a person you're going to talk to and invite or send a picture of your kid, because there's plenty of coaches I had along the way that were great coaches, but I've either lost touch with just because, they have life intercedes. And so, Coach Peterson's been one for me that, like, any big moment in my life, he's either been someone I've consulted about it, or I just let him know, hey, I'm getting married, or hey, I've had a son. And so that's, it speaks to the relationship I have with him, and someone that I'll be close with forever.
Right, most definitely. And so when you were playing for Cony in high school, what is something that you learned, it's playing at that level, playing specifically for that team? What's something that you learned through that?
I think sports in general, but football in particular, I think you learn the value of teamwork. As a baseball player, when I'm up there batting, it's really me and the pitcher. There's not much my teammates can do for me. So if I hit a home run, good for me. If I strike out, sorry guys, I let you down. But football, whether you're the quarterback, the left tackle, or receiver, like if one guy doesn't do his job, then the play doesn't really work. So I learned that. Like, it doesn't matter how much work you put in individually, it's what your team can do collectively that really determines your success. And when I was at Cony, we were a very average, run of the mill 500 level team, and
win some games, lose some games.
That's it. And we weren't great, and that wasn't really anything to do with the coaches. It was just there was some good teams, and we just weren't as good as them, quite frankly. But you learned, like, to compete with the Bangors of the world back then.
Right.
You just had to really all be doing the same thing at the same time, working out and preparing for the season. So I think I learned the value of teamwork with that as much as anything, and really dealing with failure, because like everyone likes to win, but when you put in all that work, you have one game a week. You build up for this whole game, and it's 24-0. You're down at the half. That's pretty easy to wave the white flag and say, oh, there's always next week. But you owe it to your community, your coaches, and everything to go out there and keep fighting. So baseball, if you lose on Monday, you get another game on Wednesday.
Right.
Same thing with soccer. You play Tuesday, Friday, maybe. Football, there's one
Couple
game
games
a week.
Right.
Everything's geared up to it. All the film study, all the preparations, and when that doesn't go well, that can become something that kind of stays with you from week to week, and you can get a little deflating, so to speak.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, like I said, you saw it when I was on the soccer team. We lost a lot, but you lose a lot through, as it said on this podcast a lot, you learn a lot from, like, those failures, and it sticks with you, right? Because when you're put in a position later on, maybe as a coach or, as an assistant or whatever, and you can play against that team, with a new group of kids, now you as a coaching role, feels good to, sneak that win out.
Yeah, no, there's certainly, as we get trust. So when I came here to coach in 2005. So I graduated from college in 2004, did nothing that fall associated with football for the first time in my life. And then in 2005, Tom Hines, who's still teaching at Cony, was the football coach then. He's like, hey, you want to coach football? And I was living in Portland. I was like, I don't know if I can make this work. And he's like, well, if you can. So I met with him, and I was selling insurance, believe it or not, at the time, for my first year out of college with the Ray Valley, a local name, so probably a lot of people know.
Yep.
So I was commuting back and forth to Portland coaching, and we lost our first 21 games. So my first year we won 2, but had to forfeit them because we had a kid that was a 5th-year player, long story short.
Yep.
Ended up 0-8 that year. The next year we just had devastating injuries in the preseason, went 0-9, and then in 2007 when Robbie Vachon took over as a head coach, we lost our first 4. So my first 21 games coaching football 2 of them felt like wins. We left the field with wins, but they ended up being losses. So
Right.
0-21 in your first 21 is a tough stretch. And I look back and people are like, what? How come you stuck with it? And like, I was 22, 23, 24 years old. And I was having a blast doing it, even though we lost. And so learned a lot in those moments about, like how to deal with failure, how to kind of keep people motivated. And I've applied that to, my coaching, ever since then. And
Right.
you don't want to ever, you don't want to ever be in those situations. But the thing about high school sports is you can't recruit the talent. If
No.
you're coaching at Notre Dame, you can recruit the quarterback you want. At Cony High School, you get the kids that are coming through.
You can't go over to Manchester and be like,
Right.
you've got a really good quarterback.
Yeah.
How about you come to Cony?
Yeah.
No, the MPA.
No, that's not. You don't want to be doing that. So like, you're kind of. A lot of it's dictated on your youth system, which obviously you go and cultivate and try to promote that. But if you just don't have a quarterback or you don't have a running back, if you're a run heavy team,
Right.
you got to change that up. And some of the success is based on that, but some of it's kind of the cards you're dealt to an extent. So that's another thing that, you got to be aware of, and you can't recruit your talent. You can't, pay more to get better, this, that, and the other. So it's not college football, it's high school football. And
Right.
you got to keep that in mind too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're not calling, so-and-so's agent, or let's use Ben. You're not calling Ben Lucas's agent, right?
No, we didn't have to call Ben Lucas's agent. We
call,
had to
just
get
call Chip.
Yeah, it's called Chip. They just had to move here from Hollowell, live in Augusta for 4 years.
They used to live around the court. I played Little League with him,
Yes.
actually.
Oh,
the
yes.
only fun story. The only person I got to pitch one game in my Little League experience, and the only person I struck out was him.
Big Ben, the big lefty.
Oh, and he could crank too.
He was. Yeah.
That's when we started shifting in Little League. Is
Yes.
when he could just switch feet. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
He could just pull it to one side or
He was
whatever.
certainly a pretty good athlete.
Oh yeah,
so.
that
Good,
was
you struck him
my
out.
one. Yeah,
One claim to fame.
Well, my dad taught me how to throw a sidearm like 2 weeks before this event. So
Yeah.
you go into a Little League game throwing sidearm, and nobody knew
Yeah,
what's
nobody's
going on.
seen that really. Sure.
In Halldale too. You know.
Right. Gotcha. So yeah, no, big Ben.
Oh, it's funny. It's just like those things that you remember. But anyway, it's different, right? You have to remember, this isn't the NFL. This isn't the MLB, right? This is, again, give it your all, give it your heart, give it your soul. But again, you have to remember, like, we're not, operating a business here. This is for the kids to still have fun, like that.
Yeah, so that takes some reminding every once in a while, because
Right.
it's easy to get myopic about your program or about whatever's going on with high school football, and understand that, it's not life and death. It's, for kids to have fun and learn. And, we had a number of graduates, obviously now from last year going off. Our quarterback for the last couple of years, Riley Geyer's being dropped off at Norwich today to go play college football. And Jack Began, who is at Naval Academy,
Yeah, I
just
saw
finishing
that.
up his
Yep.
plebe summer. So you look at these kids and think, okay, like the parents obviously were number one influence on them, but as a football program, kind of what our expectations were for them. It's helped to develop them as young men, and that's really the goal. Take them
Yep.
from 14-year-olds when they walk through the door and see what they look like as 18-year-olds on the
Right.
way out, and evaluate them then, and really 10 years from now. It's like, it's one thing to go to college. Are you going to graduate? Are you going to become a successful member of your community? So the success of those teams, we won a fair amount of games with those guys, but I think they're also really good people, and that ultimately should be the goal, as a coach.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I can think of at least two of my friends off the top of my head that are big football guys, and obviously close acolytes of yours, Taylor Carrier and
Sure.
Mitch Karen.
Yeah.
Those two of the nicest,
Yeah.
down-to-earth guys.
Yes.
I've known Mitch. We went from kindergarten all the way up through high school together.
Right.
I've known them a long time, but Taylor, I met a little, in like middle school or something like that. And it's just like, it's still just good to like hear from those guys, and they're good people.
Yeah, that's it.
It's just
I just want to make them good people, and
Right.
I know Taylor didn't go to the college route, but he's a hard worker.
Oh,
He-
yeah.
he does really well for himself. And
one of the
Mitchell,
hardest working guys I know.
absolutely
Yeah.
was in high school, and just a trait. You can kind of see that about in kids.
Yeah.
I think in high school you can see like, this kid's probably not going to go to a 4-year school. He just wants to get out and work with his hands. He wants
Yeah.
to be a plumber. He wants to be a
And that's what makes him
electrician.
happy. And
Yeah,
he's going to get
that's it.
more joy in that than
And
having
he's going to
to
make
go.
more money than I make.
Yeah,
I can tell you that much. He already
exactly.
is. So ask him for a loan.
Yeah. So when you moved off, or graduated, rather, not moved off, but when you graduated from Cony, next steps, college, where'd you go to college? Where'd you play?
I went to Colby,
You went to
in,
Colby?
in
Yep.
Waterville, and played football and baseball there. And
Yep.
I liked being close to home. I know it's a decision that I talk to many seniors about as they go through that senior year: is do I want to get as far away from home? Do I want to be in New England? And so I was down to a few schools, and ultimately decided that the proximity, the chance for my parents, first of all, the chance for me to play, and the chance for my parents to see me play. If I'd gone to school in California and played D3 football, they wouldn't have seen me.
Right.
So I'm pretty close, obviously, with my family, and so they came to every game I played in college. So that was one of the deciding factors. Was say somewhat local, whether it be New England. I guess they would have been able to attend any game.
Right.
So I wanted to stay somewhere in the area. Happened to be 20 minutes away, which every once in a a while, I bring home the laundry if my mom, was missing the opportunity to do my laundry. So yeah, it was good to be home. There are times I wish I'd left the state and gotten away for a little bit, but at this point, I'm 40 and I'm pretty content with the choices I made, and it was a good experience, certainly in a small school setting.
Yep.
A lot of it comes down to, you want to go to a 40,000 person campus at Michigan, or do you want to go to a smaller school and it's about 2,000 kids there, and it was felt like a pretty intimate community as far as that was concerned, and I think I benefited and enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I mean, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, like, when I was looking at, colleges, St. A's, like
Sure.
1,500,
Right.
2,000 people.
Right.
I'd like being a person versus a number. And
Yeah.
I know you're probably of a like mind. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I had friends that went to a bunch of friends that went to UMaine,
Sure.
right? And they're like, yeah, like, it's huge. Like, you never see anybody. And I'm like, that's good. I mean, trust me, there's, good and bad,
Yeah.
for big schools and small schools, right? If you screw up, everybody knows about it at a small school,
Right,
right?
right.
Or there's some consequence there. But at the end of the day, it's just nice being more part of it, a more integrated community, which Colby definitely is. I mean, I looked at Colby when I was looking at schools. Their poli-sci program's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah. So I
you know,
majored in
yeah.
government, actually. That was
Yep.
my major. And so, like, it was unique because, like, professors knew your name.
Right,
And
yeah.
they knew if you skipped class, which I did every once in a while. So, like, oh, where'd BL go? So that was a different setting. I had friends that went to some huge universities, and they're like, yeah, I got 500 people in my Psych 101 class. I'm like,
Right.
well, what happens if you don't show up? They're like, well, nobody will know. Like, it's just you don't go, and you might not pass. I was like, oh.
Oh.
So, having the experience I had and kind of comparing notes with other friends that went to different schools, it's unique. And, again, I might have been better suited to go to a bigger campus. I'll never know.
Right.
But I don't really have any regrets about going to a smaller school.
Oh, yeah.
I think it fit me pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the people I met, some of the best friends I'll have,
Sure.
like all that type of stuff, the connections I made with folks there. Like I said, the small school definitely is a unique aspect to that.
Yeah. It's just about double the size of Cony, and
Yeah.
it feels a little bigger, and it's a little different clientele, but it's definitely, I don't think I would have liked to go to a gigantic school where you're driving 20 minutes to get to campus.
Or go
and-
across campus, yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I needed things to be within walking distance for me, because
Oh.
I got up pretty close to the start of class, so I had to kind of jog to class every once in a while.
Yeah, and so what would you say that you learned from your college experience playing? Was it any change of position? Because I know sometimes you go off to
Sure.
college and you're running back. Maybe you're a fullback now or whatever.
Right.
Whatever it may be.
No,
like, what's-
I stayed at quarterback,
Yep.
which I couldn't have probably played anywhere else. I was like Ben Lucas. Ben Lucas is
Yep.
had some similarities to me. Ben couldn't have played tight end. He wasn't going to block anybody. I
Right.
wasn't going to block anyone. I wasn't going to play defense. I played a little in high school. Ben didn't.
Yep.
I wasn't going to tackle too many people, so I had to kind of play quarterback or nowhere else. So
Right.
stayed there, and I think at the college level, like, what I learned the most was how to deal with failure and setbacks, and in two different ways. One, like my sophomore year, I started, and then eventually, like, there was a quarterback battle with the kid that had been the quarterback the year before, and one week I'd start and get my hopes up, and the next week he'd start, and we kind of went back and forth, and I think dealing with that uncertainty, and you feel like you put in all this work, like I should be guaranteed to have some level of success, and I think it's a good life lesson to understand that you can do everything right and prepare, and just things don't go your way. And so my junior year, the quarterback battle was sort of over, but it worked out harder than I ever had in my life. And week 3, I separated my shoulder and was out for like the better part of 3 weeks. So, like, in an 8-week season in the NESCAC, that's a pretty big chunk of time. So I felt like, hey, I did everything right, and all of a sudden I have this injury that I can't really control.
Right.
And that I think I learned a lot from that. And then, not to go off a too deep a tangent, but like I have a son now that's 7 that has autism,
Mhm.
and I think I kind of drew on that experience as an athlete, saying I did everything right as a parent. We did all the things we were supposed to,
Right.
all these things, and all of a sudden we get dealt this hand that's like, did nothing wrong. It's just that he has autism, and he
Right.
did nothing wrong, certainly.
Yeah.
So I think being able to kind of, I've felt, this is a grander scale, obviously, than not starting at quarterback, but I think, you have these expectations, you do everything right, you hope for the best, and you get dealt something that's, out of your control. And I think I have drawn on that experience and said, like, okay, there's worse things in the world, like, I gotta have some perspective here. And I think my experience playing sports helped me with that. And I don't know, I wasn't in the band. You could probably learn that in the band. You could probably learn that, through your church or through a variety of things. But I just know my experience playing sports, and
Is what taught you that.
yeah, and preparing for, like, hoping for the best, feeling like you deserve the best. And then, not that my son's not the best, but he has autism. It makes things much more challenging than
Right.
maybe typically developing kids.
Right.
But I think it's made me a better dad because I had that experience dealing with some failure and things that didn't go my way.
Right. Yeah. No, most definitely. And it's a lot of, it's really similar to like, you set up to run, a running play, on the field, right? And it doesn't quite go exactly to the running back you want. QB has to switch it up at the last minute, shovels it off to somebody else,
Sure.
but the play still goes forward.
Sure.
So your objective is still hit, right?
Right.
We still got, closer to that first down or closer to the end zone, wherever you are. But, same thing with, parenting or whatever,
Sure.
right? Like we did everything we could, right? And now we have, what we have. And so we're going to make sure that, this is still, up to a certain level. We're going to do all we can, you know, as parents, as coaches, as players, whatever,
That's it.
right? To
That's
do
it.
our job, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And to fulfill the role as best we can.
And now with, he was diagnosed at around 3, so it's been about 4.5 years since the diagnosis. Like, there's no question I'm a better teacher and coach because of him, because I've had to be a little bit more compassionate and see things through a different lens, which I just probably never would have. And so in so many ways, he's been a gift. I hate to see him struggle to communicate. I hate to see, some of the things he goes through.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think anyone that's come in contact with him is just a better person for having him around. So it's
Most
been,
definitely.
it's been just a kind of a whirlwind of, emotions. Like I cried every day for the better part of a year after the diagnosis, just like I didn't know what his life would look like. And I still don't. He's only 7. He's still like learning the different skills, every day. But it's, it's so much different than my older son, Case. His experience, he's kind of grown up typical. And,
Right. Yeah.
He can communicate his needs, and my other guy can't. So, I think, as a teacher, coach, father, it's just made me much more perceptive and compassionate, and I think that's benefited me.
I think that's key for for everybody, right? They have certain. We're given in life, right? Certain instances, events, happenings, and depending on how we handle those, kind of drives us as a person in a lot of ways, right? Like you have this moment where you change your perspective. You go, oh, I didn't think about things like that before, or I didn't think, this is a little bit, while Case is able to say, hey, like, can you get me that?
Right.
What do you want, buddy?
Yeah.
Right. It's a different type of communication. It's a whole different, side of the apple, so to speak there. And again, like, to see like the joy that you get, from him completing, a task or whatever.
Right.
I see you post the videos or whatever, or like, he's able to dictate this or that. And it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's coming to a level of understanding.
Yeah. And I remember a good friend of mine at Cony said that when the diagnosis happened, I was obviously devastated. And he said, you're going to celebrate things you didn't celebrate with Case, whether it's learning how to buckle himself into his seat, in the car. Like I just kind of took for granted that Case could do that once he reached a certain age.
Yeah, that's normal, right?
Yeah. So like now he can. And so these things that like most parents don't really concern themselves with, and they seem trivial, and in many ways they are. Like for us, it's like, okay, he can do that now. That's one thing we can check off the box. So, it's like, it's not easy. It's not something I'd wish really on anyone, but like having been with them now in this, journey for the last 4.5 years, it's definitely made me just a better person. And in a weird way, that's, benefited me as a human being.
Right. Yeah. And I can definitely relate as far as, without, having kids of my own,
Sure.
but, teaching this last year, you have some folks that, have an IEP or have, behavior or whatever. And, you've got to learn how to, meet some, you have to think about, okay, that, home life is probably pretty tough.
Sure.
They're probably underserved, in whatever capacity, whether it be educationally speaking, like the clothes on their back, whatever it may be, nutritionally speaking. And then it's just learning to be patient and learning to, like, all right, so you're having a problem putting the sentence together. What can I do?
Sure.
To at least, like, maybe we're not going to be reading the whole book, but how can we at least complete the sentence so you at least understand what's going on in this moment?
Yeah. And I think so much of high school, we focus on being the best, and like you want to be this and that and this club and this group, and like honestly, at the end of the day, that stuff just doesn't matter. Like just because this kid either doesn't speak, or he's not in that club, or he doesn't have these clothes, it does not change like who you are as a person. So
Content
I really
of
believe,
character.
It's like,
Yeah.
like no one is better than you, and you are no better than anybody else. It's just, I truly believe that. Like we're all dealt just different. Like I had 2 parents, I still do, that love me, support me, would do anything for me. Not everyone's dealt that hand. So like for me to feel like, oh, I was in the top 10% of my class, and that kid's not, like I at the time probably you do feel that way, because it's ingrained in you to be competitive and want to be the best at all these things. And I think now, as I've experienced with Lincoln and as a teacher, as you said, you see that not everyone's, and this is just Augusta, Maine, compared to other more affluent cities or cities that are behind us socioeconomically. There's a lot of people out there that are starting on a different playing field. And as long as you can be compassionate and understand where they're coming from, it doesn't mean you lower expectations and expect nothing from them. Not at all. You got to meet them where they are and try to kind of bring them along. And so as a teacher, as a coach, and as a person, I just think it's an important skill to develop. And I didn't have it when I was younger. And I think having Lincoln has really helped me kind of ascertain kind of more
Yeah.
of what's going on in the real world that I didn't know when I
Right,
was your age.
because BL, how are you to know until you know, right?
it,
I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know it sounds cliche, but how are
No.
you to know until you know?
That's it.
Right?
And I know, I remember like, Lincoln, when we kind of first started getting nervous, was he wasn't really connecting with us, looking at us and stuff. And I just Googled like his symptoms, and it said like, or, what I was seeing, and it said autism. And I'd heard the term, I'd taught students that had it, but I didn't really know like really what that entailed. There was communication. He can't really get his needs met, all these different things. And so I didn't know until I knew. And once I kind of read through it all, I was like, wow, this is there's no pill you take. There's therapies and so forth, but it's
Right.
not like,
It's
something
not
you can cure.
It's not like cut and dry. Do this, and
Right,
this
exactly.
will be reversed.
Right,
Right?
and
Yeah,
that's a good point too. I think as an athlete or as a student, it's like, hey, if I study harder, I'm going to get a better grade. If I work harder, I'm going to play better in sports. And as a parent, it's not necessarily that cut and dry that I'm just going to do this and this is going to absolutely follow suit.
Right.
And that's a tough thing to deal with too. It's again dealing with some failure and some tough times. So yeah, I think just overall, I've changed so much from the time I was 25 to 40 now that it's like almost unrecognizable. To some people, they're like, "Wow, you're a lot different." I probably was a little bit cocky and a little bit whatever self-assured, and
Oh, yeah.
and now I think most of my life is spent serving sort of other people.
Right.
To be honest.
Right, and I mean, like I think that's true a lot of times in our youth. I mean, given I'm still younger, quite a bit younger.
Sure. Oh yeah.
About half or so your age, BL. But I mean, it's just from where I was even in high school when I was a student of yours
Sure.
for a year, and where I am now. I mean, I'm very happy for that growth, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be. People. I come back here and a couple of my friends, you've changed. And I was like, isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Sure.
Isn't that supposed to happen, right? I
Yes.
mean, like change for the better, obviously, not
Right.
for the worse. But it's just like being in high school. It's easy to just look at somebody and say, "Oh, screw you," whatever. But and when you get older, you got to think about there's a little bit more compassion there,
Yeah.
a little bit more, empathy there. It's just like, no, you can't just tell, like, you don't know what's going on in this person's life. You know what I'm saying? They might have woken up, on the wrong side of the bed, blah, 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 dad's not home,
Yeah.
mom's taking care of the other sibling, kid feels a little neglected, has a bad day at school, right? You just got to, put yourself in other people's shoes. And again, that's something that's easier to do as we get a little bit older and our perception changes a little bit.
Yeah, and what
without
I remind
question.
myself of constantly is nobody wants to fail.
No.
So if a kid looks like he's trying to fail, there's a reason for that. Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
and probably out of his control to a degree. So like, I think when I first got into teaching and certainly in coaching, a kid would make a mistake. I'm like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, well, they're not doing it on purpose, right? So like, let's
There's a
dive a
reason
little
for
deeper.
it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
so there's often something behind the scenes or that we aren't aware of. So I think the more time you invest getting to know your students, getting to know your athletes, you make those connections, and those are the kids that you can transform. When I had you in
Right.
AP government, you were going to be fine. Like, because
Yeah.
you're like, you've gone to school, you have parents that care about you.
Right.
There's some kids that aren't necessarily in that same situation that probably deserve almost all of my attention as compared to you guys. I taught you guys, and you all have gone on to college careers. And
Almost
are all,
everybody in that class
Yeah.
was going to be fine, and
Yeah,
some in
absolutely.
their own capacity,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
And so they had a pretty good hand of cards they were dealt,
Right.
and some of it was they worked for, a lot of it was they were born into it, and so there's a lot of kids that are not in that same situation, and that's
Right.
now as a teacher where I think most of my focus is.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely see that change in you. Just knowing you over these last few years, it was you're. Don't take this the wrong way. Very much more focused on like the AP kids,
Yeah,
right?
sure, yeah.
And then to hear your speech, hear bits and parts of your speech over at graduation and a
Sure.
few other things. Like that's definitely just even seeing your view change on a lot of things in the
Yeah,
last,
I mean,
last few years.
because AP Gov's fun to teach, right?
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's the kids that really like school. They do all their homework. They have the conversations that are deep.
Right.
And so I still love that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I had
of
a great
course.
year this past year as well.
Yep.
But it's really the kids. I think when I think about who am I impacting the most. Yeah, you went on to major in poli sci. You might have done that anyway. A bunch of Ben Lucas is now involved in politics, and maybe they would have
Right.
done that. But like, there's an impact there for sure. But the kids that like you're really changing the course of their life, perhaps. Like they aren't going to graduate high school, now they do.
Right.
They aren't going to go to 2-year school, now they will. They
Yes.
don't know where the next meal's coming from.
Now they do.
And
right.
now they
or-
do, and so I think
yeah.
that's been a kind of a change in me. Really, probably right around the time I went to middle school. After your group graduated, I went to teach in the middle school.
Yeah.
I've come back to the high school now.
Yep.
I think that's when the change took place, and I still love AP Gov. It's my favorite class to teach. The content, the conversations are really engaging and
Right.
enriching. But I think the impact of a teacher really can be on some of those underserved groups that are looking for someone that will help them out.
Especially at the middle school level too.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
was just down. I mean, by no choice of my own,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
It's just like you have a 7th grade class.
Yeah.
Okay, like it's a different middle school is a whole different animal.
It is.
You know, and
they're
it's
coming from different schools,
Yeah.
and they don't know each other. They're getting to know you and their classmates, and
Yep.
it's just a really hard time for kids. And so the more compassionate teachers can be and the more understanding. Of course, you want to have expectations and curriculum to get through, but I haven't met too many kids that want to fail on their own. So like there's something, if there's failures, there's a reason for that.
Yep.
And the difference between, honestly, a good teacher and a great teacher is the ones that really take that time to investigate and try to make that connection. And I'm not always great at it. I certainly am not. But there are teachers that really go out of their way to like meet those kids. You think, wow, she has that kid after school every day.
Yeah.
Like, like even if it's just for 15 minutes, just to go over the math homework one more time before he goes home, because she doesn't know if at home anyone's going to help him with his math homework. And they do. Yeah, that's quite a commitment, because at the end of the day, that bell rings at 1:50.
And the herd leaves
like,
the building, right?
It's time to go. Like, we've been here all day, and there are some teachers that are willing to go that extra mile, and it's really impressive. And you want that for your kids as they come through. And it's motivating to me as a teacher to see that and try to make those deeper connections, because it's what kids need.
It's definitely inspirational in a lot of ways, and that's the unique thing about, being in the high school, or being in that building, I guess I should say, because again, it is middle and high school, as some folks forget.
Yes.
So you said you started coaching at Cony in the early 2000s, is that correct?
2005.
2005.
So I graduated college in 2004 and then started coaching in 2005. And
with Heinze.
With Coach Hines, and really something I thought I'd do for a year or two. In fact, when he got done after my second year, I think it was his 7th year as a head coach, his son was going on to college, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to get done. I thought I was going to get done, and I was living in Portland, as I said, and the commute was, gas was $4 a gallon. We're in the midst of the Iraq War, so it wasn't a good time to be driving 60 miles both ways, but
worth it nonetheless, obviously.
Yeah, I loved it, but Robbie Vachon said, I'm putting in for it, and he said, if I get it, you got to stay.
Yep.
And I was thinking, okay, I'm 25 years old, like, I like the old port life, certainly, and I'm like, we'll see. And so he got the job and called me. He said, I told him I'm staying, and BL Lippert's staying with me, and so I said, all right, well, I'll do it again. And here I am now, 15 years from that date, and starting my 17th year coaching, and I guess 7th as a head coach, and feels like it's a huge part of my life, as probably anyone that knows me would attest.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. I can even attest to that.
Yeah. We talk a little football in AP Gov too every once in a while.
Yeah, every once in a while.
Recap the game briefly on Mondays, especially if we won.
Yeah. Little film there at the end of class.
Yeah, every once in a while.
A little once in a while. But when you started in with Robbie, were you what's the word? Were you his offensive coordinator right out the gate?
Yeah,
I knew you were his offensive coordinator. Were you all the way up until
all the way through? So that was when Tom Hines reached out to me. He said, "I'll let you call the plays."
Yep.
His son was going to be the quarterback, and he said, "We want to go to a spread offense. I know that's kind of what you're familiar with." So from the word go, I was, and I probably was ill prepared to do so as a 22-year-old. To be quite honest, I really. Thought I knew a lot more than I did. Right. And I think the more I've coached, and by the time probably you got to high school, I think, you kind of find your footing as a play caller and as a coach in general. And so, I've called the plays now. It's be year 17 coming up. And, it takes a lot of time and effort in the off season, but it's something that I love. It's like playing Madden with like real human beings, right? You tell them what to do and they go try to do it. So it's a lot of fun and something obviously that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and so you said you learned a lot along the way. So, thinking back to 2005 BL Lippert to now 2021, I guess, BL Lippert. Like, how did you learn and adapt, like, a lot of your strategies, right? Because you said you learned a lot on the fly, so to speak, or a lot when you were more ingrained into the system. You know, that's obviously developed as, you've been a coach longer, been with the same program for longer. Without spilling the beans, obviously, giving away any secrets.
I think initially, like, you try to do too much. I think you want to call a million different plays, and you have an answer for everything on the field. And so there's a period where you have 100 plays, and none of them you really run all that well. But I could feel like, okay, if we call this play against that defense, it should be a touchdown. Right. We don't score a touchdown. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, they haven't run the play enough, right? And so is it Bruce Lee, whoever the guy is, said, I don't fear the guy that has done 10,000 kicks one time. I fear the guy that's done one kick 10,000 times, right? And so that's really kind of the focus. And our best years when we had Ben Lucas, we really were in only 3 or 4 formations.
Right.
You didn't have to do the smoke and mirrors and motion and try to fool people. You just lined up and you executed.
You just threw the ball. Right.
Yeah, right. That's that too. So you try to keep it as simple as you can for your own athletes, for your own sanity. And then over time, I think, coaches are thieves. Like, I see something on TV that Lincoln Riley runs at Oklahoma, and I go, hold on, I got to rewind that. And I go, okay, we have that formation. We run that play. Okay, that would be a nice little change up. So you try it out, and you got to be willing also to admit that things don't work. Right. So every once in a while, you see a play and you run it, and you're like, it's going to look great. And then over the course of the week, I'm like, this just doesn't look good. There's no way I can call this on a Friday night. And you kind of ditch it. And that's hard to do because, you spend some time and investment trying to come up with this plan. And, sometimes it doesn't work. So I think, like, as an adult, as a parent, like, some maturity comes along with that. and focusing now, like when I was just the offensive coordinator that taught at Richmond High School, or at first when I was selling insurance, I didn't see kids much beyond like on the practice field.
Right.
And so like I didn't know them on a deep personal level. So if you were the fourth string right tackle, like
You're kind of a cog in the machine.
Yeah,
so
I knew
to
the
speak.
names.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna say I didn't know their names,
Right.
but I didn't know much about their personal life. Now I just came over here to your house here after being in the weight room for 3 hours with
Yeah.
kids, and so you just get to know kids over time. You know their
Right.
families, you know their siblings, and so I think the more you know about a kid, the more the kid is like, okay, Coach Lippert cares about me.
Right.
I want to play a little bit harder for him because he had something at stake, and he's not just yelling at me on a Friday night because I made a mistake. So that's a maturing process too as a coach, that I don't have all the answers. I'm never going to have all the answers, but if I have 40, 50, 60 kids that want to play Cony football, I feel pretty good about that going into the season.
Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, like, that's, again, it's something that with anything that takes the time, to implement in with the program. And I mean, that's no secret. That's with anything. I mean, I can think back to my first year of, coaching, helping out with the soccer team versus now. I'm much more cool, calm, and collected than I was. You really try to overhandle, right?
Yes,
and
yeah.
that's because I think it's a lack of maybe comfortability with what you're doing. Like, yeah, like you and I both probably had, hundreds or thousands of hours playing the sport.
Right.
But it's different when you're, on the opposite side of the sideline.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think even hearing you say that, like, I don't know, I assume refs like now that have coached for 15 years have seen a change in me. I thought when I was 22, you're yelling at the refs at every turn. And,
Right.
And then you think about the implications that has for your team. It's like, well, they were watching me yell at the ref. So it's like, okay, it's easy for them to go, oh, these refs are out to get us.
yeah.
That's a bad call. Coach Lip's mad. Now I'm mad.
Yeah.
And does that really serve any purpose? No, I do get mad every once in a while still. But like when I was younger, you felt like that was really you see NFL coaches do it or college coaches do it. And, it almost gets glorified. Oh, look at
Right.
Bobby Knight throwing a chair
Yeah.
across the floor, and like you think that's what coaching is.
Yeah.
And so I was probably that way for the 3 or 4 years, and then over time I was like, this isn't really beneficial. Like I'm still going to get animated every once in a while, there's no doubt, but I think controlling your emotions as a coach says so much about because we ask our athletes to be under control.
Yep.
And you look at the sideline, your coaches act like a lunatic. It's like,
Creates
well,
a double standard.
yeah, you want
right?
me to
Yeah.
have self-control, coach, and not respond, but yeah, you flip out every time.
You're throwing clipboards
yeah,
and stuff.
it's like
yeah.
it just doesn't make sense. Every once in a while is a motivational tactic. I guess it does make some sense.
Right.
But just in general, if your demeanor is to constantly be deriding the refs and yelling at every player on your team and calling them names, I just don't think that really is beneficial to your kids. You might overcome it because you just have enough talent,
Right.
but I think you've got to really be thinking about the message you're sending by any of those actions.
Well, it affects the grain of your team or the lifeblood of your team really too, because again, like I said, learned by example.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a coach that's like, all right, we're going to go out and massacre them, for example, before Millet took over the soccer program, I mean, there was like, how many cards is the Cony boys soccer team going to get? You
Yeah.
know, they might as well have been a bunch of hooligans running
Right.
around, knocking people over and whatever else. And like, it affects that was ingrained in the team. And that was something that had to be either let out or forced out or taught out really over
Yeah.
time. And again, it's dangerous because you can really corrupt the fabric of your team if from the top down. It's easy enough for it to happen.
No question.
You see it happen all the time.
Yeah, and I remember like when I first got into coaching, I almost would like scoff at the concept of like a sportsmanship banner, like, oh, that goes to the worst team,
yeah.
and they're really nice, they help you off the ground when you get But now, like we won one in 2018. I gotta admit, I never thought Cony football when I was there would win one. We did win one.
Right.
We had really good players that were really good students that were really good people.
Yep.
And like that's really like it's not the goal every year is to win that. Like it's
Right.
great if you do. You want to win a red banner instead of a blue banner, a state championship
Naturally.
one. But like along the way, like I've come to appreciate like the kids that we have that play the game the right way. They aren't out there to embarrass people or try to be showy, look at me stuff. And so I think that takes some cultural changes. There's people that challenge you on that a little bit that are going to get some of those red cards or yellow cards or in
Right.
football get a personal foul. It doesn't mean you kick them off the team because usually they're pretty good. So you got to find a way to not do that. But
Right.
yeah, I think there's a lot more goes into it than just the winning and losing and how you represent your community. And when I get letters, last year we lost or in 19 we lost in the playoffs to Mount Blue, and a parent from Mount Blue sent a letter about how classy our team was. Now,
Right.
it didn't make me feel much better about the loss, but the fact that they recognized that and said, it speaks to something you guys are doing right as a coaching staff that made
True.
me feel good.
True.
I would rather had a win than that letter. I'll be honest with you, Ryan. But as a consolation, it was okay.
Yeah, no, and that's huge too. And again, I was the same way. Like when I played, or it didn't matter what sport, track, swimming, soccer, Oh, sportsmanship award?
Yeah.
Who wants that?
Yeah.
And then my senior year, we won one
Yeah.
for the
It's
swim
like,
team. And
yeah.
it's like, oh, and I asked Millet, I was like, how do you get in for this? He goes, you just do the right things. You're good people.
Yeah.
Your team's just full of good people. And it was like, me, Brad Beckel, and
Sure.
a few
Yeah.
other really, Noah Obi,
Yep.
a lot
Yep.
of really, decent people, but
Right.
also decent athletes
Right.
too.
Yeah, no, that's it. Is you just want your kids to represent your program well,
Yeah.
represent your city well, and winning is a great way to do that.
Yes.
But if you're winning the wrong way, you're winning with bad people, you're cutting corners, and that
Or-
doesn't
yeah.
feel well at the end of the feel great at the end of the day. So try to do the things the right way. And again, this is me at 40 versus me at 25. There's
Right.
been a big change as far as that's concerned too.
Right, yeah, and don't get us wrong. The winning is an important part of it, but also, again, keeping it humble. The humanization part of athletics too. But moving away from that for a minute. So back in 2013, yeah,
Yeah.
I knew you knew I was going to bring this up, BL. You can't not. Cony High School won a state championship for the first time. What was it? In almost like 100 years or a long time.
So yeah,
It had been-
1932 they won
Yeah.
it. There was no state championship game. They
Yes.
just went undefeated in the regular season. They kind of compared, and they said, Coney, almost name yourself the state champion in
championship,
1932.
yep.
And so, it had been 81 years,
Yep.
almost a Red Sox, type drought there.
Yep.
And we knew we had a good team. In 2012, we lost the Eastern Maine final to Lawrence.
Lawrence, I was at that game. That was a heartbreaker
Yeah,
too.
we're up 10-0, and then ended up losing 20-10. They they were better than us, probably, player by player, but we had them on the ropes there for a minute.
Mhm.
So we knew we had a good team coming back. We'd lost a couple great players. Chandler Shostak
Yep.
was a superstar. Brandon St. Michael, Kyle.
Yep.
We lost some good players. Wes Benner off that team. So
Yep.
we knew we were good. And then started off the year on fire. Lost down at Brunswick, and kind of was like a humbling experience. And then really in week 7, we went down to Greeley, who had been thumped by Kennebunk 42-0. We lost to Greeley 35-21. And so you do a little math, and you're like, well, that means Kennebunk's 56 points better than us because they destroyed this team that beat us.
Right.
So we went into the playoffs a little bit shaken, like we aren't maybe quite as good as we thought we would be. We're able to beat Messalonski in the semifinal, beat Brunswick down there, and probably my favorite game I've ever been a part of, 48-38 in the Eastern Maine final, and then went on to beat Kennebunk, who was an outstanding team, down 16-0 in the third quarter, and rallied back to win that 30-23. Just really like a storybook season.
It really was.
I mean, you got the, how often can you win a state championship, have the best player in Maine that wins the Fitzy and the Gatorade Player of the Year,
Oh, yeah.
and the way the community supported everything.
Yep.
It was just an amazing experience. And I remember Paul Vachon, the AD at the time, was like, soak this all in because it might never happen again. And I remember kind of looking at him like, what do you mean? He goes, no, I'm not saying you're not going to win a state championship again because I think you probably will. But like to have all these things lined
Fall
up in this
into
one
place,
year.
yeah.
It even went on to, we coached in the Lobster Bowl that year. Robbie was the head coach. I helped him and we won
Yep.
that game. And, so we had 4 players in the Lobster Bowl that year. It was just
Yep.
like almost a perfect season. We had a couple bumps along the way, but at the end of the day, when you look back and just amazing. And that's a group of seniors and even, juniors on that team that were so impactful.
Oh, yeah.
And they've all graduated, moved on to their
Yep.
lives now. And the 10-year anniversary of that's coming up here a little quicker than I, really realized. So we'll do something for them, I'm sure, in 2023 to recognize, what it meant to the, there's still people, I've talked to just about everybody in my life that, people watching it from across the country
Oh, yeah.
online and, all
The
these
people, the
videos.
amount of people that came up for the game.
Yeah,
too.
no, it was great.
It was,
up at Orono under the
it was
lights
like
on a Friday
Augusta
night.
just packed up and moved north
Yes.
for an hour.
Yeah, if you're going to commit a crime in Augusta, that would have been the night to do it. You could rob someone's house because nobody was there.
Nobody was home.
Nobody was home. So,
Yeah.
it was pretty cool to see. And so, it's a little while removed now. The kids that are playing for me now maybe have a little bit of a recollection of that, but that team will live on forever in Cony. And it would take something for any team I coached ever again to pass that group because they just, of the 19 seniors, I think 18 made all academic or 17 maybe made
Yep.
all academic. And, it's a lot of them went on to great 4-year college careers and are in the workforce now. And just, a perfect season. Again, not a lot of injuries. You need a lot of breaks along the way to win that. And we found that out, since then. We've had a couple, 3 or 4 heartbreaking, playoff losses and, somebody going for 2 at the buzzer. And,
Oh, yeah.
so like it takes this perfect storm of events to win a state championship. And
Yep.
in Augusta, I grew up here. Like it's never been a football town. It just hasn't. It's been a baseball town. It's been a girls basketball town. And maybe for the last decade, football's been pretty high up on the priority list of things that people like, being associated with. So
Right.
it's been fun to see that change, but it just takes a ton to sustain that. And that
Oh,
group
yeah.
that came through was so special. And I can run into whether it's Ben or Jonathan Sabin or Charlie Halleck, all these guys, great players.
Great guys. Too,
Yeah, you
on
see
top
them, and
of
it's
it.
just
Yeah.
that you just can't help but smile. I mean,
Right.
the memories we created on that run in November, just really incredible, and what you live for as a coach. You know,
Right.
I don't know that we'll win another state championship ever. It's just really hard to do, but we got to do it once with a
Right.
and the parents of that group. We never heard a word. Like, it's not one person complained about playing time, about anything. And almost the perfect group of parents as far as that was concerned. That's hard to do. I
Yeah.
understand you want your kid to play. Nobody said anything. Everyone's goal from the time of the Eastern Maine Championship ended in 2012 was to win the state championship in 2013, and everything we did really was geared up for that. And it really was a storybook finish, 99-yard drive to win the state championship. you
Right.
know.
I remember it.
It was just
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
so I gotta
The
be honest,
energy at that game was unreal. Being, I would, in the Pep band,
Yeah.
we were, trying to keep everybody,
Oh, yeah.
up and going, and it wasn't always easy. A, it was cold as hell.
Yes, it
and
was
B,
very chilly.
and it was right before Thanksgiving. Like,
Yes.
what, all of a week before Thanksgiving.
yeah.
And I mean, it was cold, and it was a hard fought game the whole way.
Oh, yeah,
I remember a couple stuff. I remember. Elijah Toby had that one stop. He was a buddy of
he had
mine.
a fumble recovery,
fumble
Yeah.
recovery.
Yeah.
And then I remember Taylor vaulting over a guy, and like I
Yes.
was like, "Oh, dude, you're putting it all out on the
Oh,
line
yeah.
tonight, no question asked."
He took off from the 5-yard line trying to make his way. He got hit in his shins and got flipped over
Yeah.
and landed at about the 3-yard line. Didn't quite make it in, but
No.
it just showed the sacrifice he was willing
yeah.
to put in. And he wasn't alone. That's why that group is just one that's, going to be
Great.
hard to match.
Yeah, no, most
Hard to match.
definitely. And I mean, like I had, kept tabs on the team, even after graduation. Like my buddies, the Antworths, their cousin
Yeah.
Eli played
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah.
And I mean, it was cool to see him, go to a game or two when I'd be home for Columbus Day and,
Yeah.
like, see him play. Because it was a different, having Taylor Heath as your, quarterback changed things up a little
Yeah,
bit. It was different because I was always very familiar with seeing Ben play
Yeah.
or senior year, see Mitch play.
Yeah.
So to see a team that I had, very little visual time seeing, it did change things, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And it's a different style, and then also it's also fully the BL program too,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
right.
that's
true,
just
too.
the fact,
Yeah.
the matter. And so it's been interesting to see as like a fan, fan's perspective to see things change too.
Yeah, and so much of it changes with your personnel. Like, so if you don't have a quarterback that throws as well, and not that Taylor Heath didn't, he's one of the better throwers we ever had, but things just have to change with your personnel. We don't have just a system we just plug people into. We look at our people and kind of adapt the system
This
to
is
them.
what we have. This is what we can do.
I think that's
right.
what you have to do as a coach, because if you keep calling the same plays that should work and they aren't, like, do you feel better at night? You're like, hey, I called the right plays, I just can't execute them. They stink.
What's going on, guys? I'm calling the play.
Yeah, no, like, you got to call plays that they can succeed in. And again, that comes from a little bit of maturity as an adult and as a coach. And
Right.
I probably wouldn't have done that at age 24. So there's been a lot of changes, and I think you got to continue to evolve, whether it's as a teacher, as a parent, as a human. Like, you got to continue to look at what's going on with kids, what's going on with society, and you've got to continue to evolve, and that applies to every walk of life.
Yeah, I always like, I can't remember what movie this is from or whatever. I definitely stole it from somebody. Always forward, never backwards.
Right.
Like that's
Yeah.
You can spin your wheels a little bit, but you always should be striving to get to that next thing, whatever it
Next
is.
play. Have a
It doesn't
goldfish.
yeah.
Goldfish memory, we call that.
Yeah.
Goldfish remember things for 10 seconds, right? So if you make a bad play, you got to have a goldfish memory. And
Yeah,
forget
it's gonna
that.
it'll throw your whole game off.
Correct.
We talk to the kids on the soccer field about that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, especially with soccer, because it's not like run the play, stop.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We don't
Right,
don't really get the huddle.
Yeah.
We have to like sub the kid out, talk with him really quickly, throw some water back in his face, and
Yeah.
get him back out.
No,
on
it's
the
true.
field.
It is, and that's a hard thing as an athlete.
Yeah.
That's probably what I struggle with the most, with some of the failures of, like, okay, I just let the team down, and,
Yeah.
and to forget about that and say, okay, I'm gonna get another at bat, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
get another chance to throw the ball here. Like, it's a hard thing to do, and the quicker you can bounce back from some adversity, the better you're going to be just in general in life. Like,
Yeah.
if you can't respond to, somebody telling you something negative at work, if it just ruins your whole week, well, that you're not really helping anybody that
No,
week. So
you got to either
gotta
make
bounce
some
back.
changes yourself or figure something out
that's
because
or
it's not
find-
working.
That's exactly it. So that's a good life lesson too, I learned.
Oh, most definitely. And so I know we had talked at the beginning of the podcast or the beginning of this episode about how, obviously no season last year because of COVID, close
Yeah.
proximity, too many people, whatever reasoning you want to throw behind it, right? A little convoluted getting things off the ground there, but looking very positive towards, things back to some business as usual here. So what are your, expectations going into, because like you said, no one had a season last year. So, and we've talked about the same thing on the soccer side. Like, no one had a real normal season
Right.
in a lot of ways. So
Right.
everybody's kind of at the same place. But like with soccer, we still played. With you guys, no one stepped foot on the field.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult transition because we would have had like 18 or 19 seniors, and now they're gone. So there's this real gap in experience. That,
Right.
if you played a lot as a sophomore, now you're a senior. For us, it was really one or two kids that played significant minutes. So we've got a group of seniors coming in that haven't played much, right? And I know that's the case for a lot of schools, but we've seen, 16, 18, 20 kids that are kind of on the fence about coming back to football. Some of them would say, hey, I didn't play much as a sophomore. I'm not sure I'll play much now. Or I got a job in the interim. I work a lot. I need to pay off my truck, or I have insurance I got to pay now. So I don't know is the answer. Like, I think our numbers will take a little bit of a dip. I'm talking to some coaches. They're going to remain exactly where they were. Others have seen slight dips. Others have seen significant dips. So I think we're going to find out, at the end of the week when we have fall sports night and figure out who's showing up and
who's not.
And who's not. And so it's going to be a lot of kids that have not played a lot of football. And I just try to view that as a challenge as a coach. It's like we got to get them up to speed as quickly as we can. And it's going to be much more of a teaching year than I've had in a long time because, usually you have a lot of experience coming back. Even with 22 starters, you usually have at least 10 guys that have got some experience.
Right.
We really have one or two that have played much. So it's going to be a lot of slowing it down, coaching it from the ground up, for lack of a better phrase. And so be the most unique preseason I've ever been associated with because we just so many new faces that we've begged and hey, why don't you play football? You should play football.
Oh, I saw your post on Facebook, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody like the head coach ever have to. Hey guys, come play.
Yeah, no, it's just in contacting. We should have about 17 seniors coming back, and right now I'm planning on about 9.
Yeah.
So there's a handful of kids and a couple sophomores that would have probably played freshman football because that's a different experience. You're playing other freshmen. Now all of a sudden you're a sophomore and you're playing seniors from Lawrence and so
playing some big
like,
boys.
Maybe I'm going to sit this one out. Maybe I'll pick it up as a junior. So there's a lot of unknowns, and I guess. I tried to be a little bit hands-off during the pandemic. I encouraged a couple kids to play golf. Like, hey, if they're going to have a golf season, do you want to try golf? Go play golf. Well, now they're playing golf. They're not coming back to football. So maybe I shouldn't have done that. I had a bunch of kids do cross-country. I told Coach Topman, go ahead. They all came back to football because cross-country is just too hard.
Well,
so
their sport is everybody else's punishment.
Exactly. Running around for fun has never been something I do. So as you might have guessed. But I think that's kind of the unknown is who's coming back.
Right.
And maybe they're saying they're not coming back, but they ultimately will. We'll find out soon enough.
Find out on Sunday, right?
That's it. We got to be adaptable. I had a kid said he's going to work. He has to work all through double sessions. He goes, I told the guy I'd work through August 31st. And so if you'll let me play at that point, will you? And I said, yeah, we'll take you. We will, and we'll see if he shows up. But I'm going to have to be a little bit more lenient as far as that's concerned. And that's been the first time since in a while. And I can't blame it solely on the pandemic, but it feels like a lot of those numbers, kids got used to not playing football.
Or not playing sports in general.
If you're a football wrestling guy, of which there's a lot of them, they didn't have a season at all. They played 7-on-7, and that's not really their cup of tea.
It's not the same.
There was no wrestling, so it's been a really tough thing. And mental health, I'm really concerned about kids too coming back, and that's something that we've been cognizant of as teachers, as and as coaches. We've tried to be as supportive as we can because everyone dealt with that pandemic differently, whether it's what you saw or heard at home or even with vaccinations now, what you're seeing and hearing. So it's going to be unlike any year in coaching, and that's okay. It's we'll do the best we can, and I view kids as probably at their neediest right now as they've ever been. So it's really important we do a good job.
Yeah, no, most definitely, and I think we're of a like mind over on our side of the pitch, so to speak, with the soccer things. It's just everybody went through this whole last year and will continue to go through things in their own way, right? And it's just. I thought a lot about actually when we had our coaches meeting the other night with AD Millett. He just want them to still be kids. Which is, we talk about Schiff. Like, I'd never heard him say anything like that before. And I've spent plenty of time around him, obviously, coached with him, taught from him, learned from him. But, it's just interesting to hear him say that. So obviously this thing has shifted everybody's perception on, the whole role of everything, not just, strictly athletics, but school. We had conversations last year about, we're seeing now more kids being pulled out of school to go on family trips, ice fishing, going up to camp, hike, whatever it might be. And that has been a lot higher, the unexcused absences. Those were higher than, ever, not just because kids were sick or whatever, but because they were spending more time. And so it's like, is that necessarily a bad thing? Either, right? And so it's this whole last year has given us a lot to think about on not only the athletic front, but just like the societal front.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just
kids used to plan their summers around their sports.
Yeah,
I feel like this summer they planned their life and then fit sports in where they could.
Wherever,
right?
So we had that a lot. We had practices or games.
They're
and
camping for the weekend. Okay, like in the old days, they probably wouldn't have done it. They'd been
right?
Like, I can't go.
No, I gotta go to play soccer. I gotta go to play football. Yeah,
and I don't think it's the end of the world. I think some coaches struggle with that. Like, what do you mean you're going to be gone for that week?
Yeah.
We have
what do you mean you're gone for like a month?
Yeah, it's like, and we want kids to be kids, and I think it's almost like resetting our expectations.
Yes.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Every once in a while, it's okay to review what you do and say, geez, if I'm a high school kid that plays football or soccer, they play basketball, they play baseball, or they're getting pulled in a million different directions, and
Most
they're trying to
definitely.
work, and they're trying to have
Assuming
a family
they're
vacation.
not also doing chisel whizzle,
Right, yeah.
or blah blah blah.
Right. And so I
Right.
think it's okay for us every once in a while to say, I view all of our workouts in 7-on-7, like it's really important to me, so it should be really important to them. Well, it might not be. They might
Yeah.
play football solely because it's fun, not because they think it's life and death and they can't wait to go play Gardner on August 27th. They're just doing it because they want to get out with their buddies and play. And so I think we got to be cognizant of that as coaches this year more than ever. I think before we had them kind of well trained to this is what summer looks like for Cony football.
This is our program.
Yeah.
We follow the program. We win games.
Right. That's kind of what we've that's
don't question it.
Yeah,
This-
that's what we
this
try
is
to
how
do.
it works.
Yeah, and it's almost that is the roadmap, because when we didn't lift very hard in the summer, we didn't really win as many games.
Right.
So I think there is a real connection between summer working hard, winning games. I do think there's a connection, but I think you can also be a little bit malleable and try to figure out what works for kids and what doesn't. It just takes some more 21st century coaching and get out of that 20th century coaching model, which some of us are used to.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And like I said, I find myself, even, trying to not be as hardline, again, there's just being strict is one thing,
Sure.
right? Of course. You got to keep some type of, regimen and
Yeah,
expectation.
you don't want to get walked all over.
Yeah,
or be a
exactly. You can't get
pushover.
walked over by any means, but at the same time, you do have to, instill in some of these kids a little bit more, like a regiment. And that's what a lot of us have lost over this last year's regiment,
Oh,
right?
sure.
And it's just even trying to reestablish regiment's hard for a lot of folks.
No doubt.
I mean, I can even speak for myself in
No
that.
doubt, yeah.
It's like, all right, get your ass out of the house, go to the gym, go
Yeah.
get used to doing those things again.
Yeah.
And sports are a huge part of that. Get used to going to football practice at 3:00 after school,
Right.
right? Changes, when kids need rides, when
Yeah.
this, when
No.
that, and it's just been, we're at a really unique opportunity. And I've spoken with this, a lot of other folks who are in education and in coaching in general. We have a lot of opportunity to change some things that aren't working,
Yes.
right?
Now's the time to do it.
Exactly, because if we don't do it now, we're not.
Right, yeah. And if
We're
you go
not gonna
back
do it all.
if you go back to your old school ways now, maybe it's working and it's perfectly fine, but it's
Right.
okay to reassess. Even for me as a teacher, not
Yeah.
to go, Google Classroom was something I used a little bit of 5 years ago.
Are you using it more now?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, basically with all those kids online and everything's on, it actually makes life easier on me.
streamlines a lot
It
of
does.
things,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness! And I was so I wasn't obstinate, I'm never going to do this.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to take the time to invest 10 or 12 hours to figure
Right.
out how to use it, upload all this stuff. I had to do it this year because some
Right.
kids were online at home.
Yep.
And I'm so glad I did it. Now when I go into teaching here on August 31st,
You're
my
ready to
stuff's
go.
online.
Yeah,
Of course, I'm going
already-
to add
yeah.
to it, subtract
Yeah.
from it, but I've got a bulk of that online. I know how to utilize it, so I'm going to get out of my old school teaching methods
Right.
and a day. You want to mesh some stuff that worked with some stuff you're willing to try. And
Right, exactly.
I think that's what the pandemic taught us, is that you can't expect to have the same thing forever and take it for granted. I took high school football for granted. I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I put everything into it, but I never thought there'd be a season we didn't have. I
Right.
thought it'd be World War III.
Yeah.
We're fighting a civil war in the U.S.
Right, yeah.
What would ever keep us from having a season? I couldn't in my head comprehend that, and now holy cow! I better not take that for granted anymore, because at any moment's notice you can have the rug pulled out from you, and something you love pretty dearly is not a part of
Yeah.
your life. And that was
And
it
you're
was a dark
definitely
year.
not alone in that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's scary, right? Something that we're so normal, state of normalcy with, and then gone.
Gone. That's a deal. And I know there's a lot of things, people that went through that, whether it's with their jobs or whatever. So football's trivial compared to that, but it's a big part of a lot of people's lives, a big part of a community focus. And so with that gone, it felt
It
just
definitely
like a
felt
hollow
like
fall.
something was missing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
I agree with you. I mean, just being around and oh, it's Friday night, and even you can sit from my house and see the
Here, yeah,
football. You
right.
can sit in here, eat TJ on the
Right,
PA
right,
or the
sure.
lights,
Right.
and it's just
It's quiet.
silent. Yeah, it was quiet Friday nights are weird.
Yeah, no, yeah. Last fall, I found stuff to do. I didn't want to
Yeah.
sit at home and lament it all. So I tried to play golf on a Friday
Yeah.
afternoon. So I wasn't we should be playing Brunswick tonight.
Yeah, right,
And I still did it.
exactly. Yeah.
But it was a little bit better to try to be busy, because I didn't want to sit around and just lament all the things we were missing out on.
Right, yeah, no, most definitely. So speaking of sitting around and waiting a little bit, as a lot of the folks in the community know, but folks listening outside of the community may not know, we're currently in the process of giving a facelift, so to speak, to the football field complex there. Turf field's going to be getting put in, or is in the process of being
Yes.
put in, literally as we're speaking. I'm
Probably
pretty
hear
sure-
it if we open the window.
So that must be exciting for you. What role did you play in, did you play a direct role getting that off the ground with, I mean, I know the Brigio told the whole story a few weeks ago and that whole shtick, but what was your role in the process of getting that
Yeah, so the impetus of it really was, I mean, they wanted to do it back in like 2010 era, just really fell well short in the fundraising.
Yeah.
It's, $1.5 million.
It's a big
It's
expense.
a big endeavor, yeah, no doubt. And so they fell short then, which, a lot of communities did. It was almost like a luxury then. It wasn't something that was really necessarily needed to the level that I think we did now.
Right.
And so we lost in 2018. We had to move a playoff game down to Lewiston because our field was just unplayable. I had a bad year with grubs, and it was literally just mud. So we moved, we lost. We didn't lose because of the field, but I think a lot of people were like, that seems unfair. We have this great community, we have this great team, and we have to like travel for a home game. And so some people started meeting together and having some conversations, and it really led to a committee reforming. And then, the Bob Moores of the world and Eric Lind was the head of the committee, and all these people put in a ton of effort, Brigio and all these people. And then the pandemic hits.
Yes.
And so we had raised, 300,000 or 400,000, and now Bob Fuller, a local lawyer, is now retired down in the D.C. area, had agreed to match up to 500,000, and so the numbers just weren't working out. The bids came back a lot higher. Construction costs were higher. Last year at this time, it was kind of a moot point. We weren't going to get it.
Right.
Well, Mr. Fuller caught wind of that it had kind of fallen short, and said, well, I'll write the check for the whole thing. Like, what do you need? And so that news broke in February. They went right to work finding a company. This group out of Georgia, Field Turf Inc., I think is the name of it.
Yep.
They agreed to do it. So they broke ground right at the end of track season and had a little bit of a delay because of drainage pipe. Drainage pipe issue that, a lot of the stuff related to COVID, the factories are slower. They aren't making as much. You can't work in the close proximity they once did. So drainage pipe on top of any other number of things. Materials are just so that field sat for about a month, almost the entire month of July, without any work being done. And really, over the course of the last maybe 5 or 6 days, they've gone to work and they're installing that drainage pipe. And so we're hopeful that to have it done by hopefully the midpoint of the season, maybe get 2 or 3 home games on there, ideally.
Yep.
But just to have that as a resource for youth soccer, youth football, baseball in the spring.
It's a big draw for the community regardless.
It's huge, yeah. And just, it really transforms a lot of sports, whether it's lacrosse. They can get out there on March 15th or whenever practice starts, instead of having to practice in the gym and break all the bleachers and break windows.
Break all the bleachers,
baseball, they can plow it off and hit fly balls in March, work on some of the stuff you couldn't do elsewhere. So I think it's really going to transform. We're going to find out a lot of people are going to want to use it. So already this fall, our youth football is like, well, we'd love to play our games there on Wednesday afternoons at 5. I was like, well, we have practice and soccer might have a game, so it just takes a lot of scheduling to get that done. But what a good problem to have is that, as long as we keep up on our other fields, if we can't practice on the field, we can still practice behind the school.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
So it's going to be a great resource. And, the generosity of Bob Fuller is just,
I mean, it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
it's unreal. It really is. And to see that, to hear that eventually, I'll just match. Like that's so generous. Just at itself. And then it's like, all right, you guys aren't gonna be able to do it. I'll pony up and do it. No problem, guys.
Yes.
Like that again shows that and people like, it's like they throw around the term disgust. I'm like, listen, Augusta's got a lot going for it.
Oh, there's no doubt.
And there are just the people here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say there's good people everywhere, obviously, but some of the people here, BL, you just see, acts of kindness like that. And the guy doesn't even live in the community anymore, right?
No.
Like directly. Obviously probably keeps tabs on what's going on and everything like that, but just amazing.
And in 2010, I wasn't on the committee. I was living in Portland, as I said, and so I knew about it just from the contacts I had. But this time I was on the committee, was able to see all the work the mayor did and Eric Lind and all these different people like Jimmy Coffin. I'd be remiss not to mention Jimmy, a local engineer who, volunteered a ton of work and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of engineering services he just donated to the community. And these people, I had no idea until you see it firsthand. You're like, wow, I didn't realize, how much went into this. And to have it, come to fruition this fall, hopefully whatever our first game is on there, it's going to be quite a night. And just as something, as you said, as a centerpiece of this community moving forward, we can host different, whether it's a state track meet or whatever it might be. It's just going to be pretty cool. It's something that, Augusta, really deserves, because there's so many great people that have worked for so long, and to get that generous donation and give this great facility to the community is going to be unreal.
Yeah, no, and I can't wait to see it. I mean, not even just living close, but, competing down there myself, it'd be great to see. And I mean, I know some of those games. I played on that field. We used to play a soccer game or whatever. But that field would just get so, by the end of between football and anybody else that wanted to use it, and then in the spring with lacrosse and whatever else was going on, I mean, the field would just get so beat up, and it was in, it's a bowl. So, I mean, it drains when it wants to drain.
Right, yeah.
And it's just to see that turf going in is going to be a game changer. Huge game changer.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be in September. It was really a great field. But then once early October, that would rain, and it would just sit there. and then it just turned to mud. You know, and like there's some Cony Gardner games we have on film where it's literally like just mud the whole second half of the game. And, it limits what you can do offensively and makes parents mad. They have to wash, power wash those uniforms.
The
for
white
like,
uniform,
9 times. So it's gonna be great, and I'm just excited for the youth of this community too. They get to grow up and
it also creates kind of like a attainable goal for them too.
Sure.
Hey, you get to go play on the big stage or on the big field, right? And so that's unique too in its own way. To motivate more folks to get involved. Especially if you have the facilities. I mean, we're very lucky in this town to have the quality athletic facilities you do between Cara. I mean, that was all private, all volunteer time up there. I mean, I'm sure you've played baseball.
I've played a million baseball games on those fields.
I mean, Al Cloutier and Steve, those guys up there, and the whole board, they're awesome.
It's crazy. Joe Linscott passed away this past year.
He was a huge. I mean, I know. I mean, basically, my neighbor lived right back here.
Right.
I mean, I used to see him when I'd work up there, be up there doing something. I mean, just to talk with him, you could tell how been around this area, until
60 years at that field.
And it's amazing.
Like
the time he put in up there, and like the amount of these. Like Dave Hastings up at the soccer part with my dad, like the amount that these people care.
That's it. And I said at the beginning, I grew up in this town and like just benefited from the amount of care and amount of effort they put into this. And I didn't take it for granted. I don't think at the moment, because I'd travel to play at a different baseball field and go, oh, this is nothing like Cony. We have 2 fields, Morton and McGuire back to back. If one of them's a little wet or there's a Babe Ruth game, we'll go to the other field. And it's like, what an incredible complex they built there. And now to add this, the track that was built in the 90s, and now getting a turf field there to go with a new school that came a decade ago. It's the downtown's being revitalized.
That's awesome.
Just a ton of stuff that's going on. It's great.
I know that probably during the summer you've driven around, putted around, and seen like middle of the day on a Wednesday, downtown's hopping.
Yeah, it is.
Between businesses, restaurants, everything like that. And I know I've talked with my dad last episode about that. Talked with a few other people that have really been around here, and they're like, "This is fantastic.
Yeah,
like, this is all we
70s,
wanted.
Right?
Yeah,
in the 70s, it was like a destination. You'd come here and go downtown for the day and shop and go to dinner. And when I was a kid, there wasn't really much of that downtown, to be honest. And now it's a huge part of, I got friends that are coming through. They go, hey, I had a basketball game up at Mango. We're driving through. You want to stop at Kushnock and have a pizza? It's like, that never was something that people wanted to do.
It's like, you want to go out to eat
In
downtown?
Augusta. It's like, it used to be at some of the
I'll meet you up at the mall
places.
or something. It wasn't. And I think that's awesome. And I mean, we're, again, another great opportunity to really, double down on an area that is up and coming, right? I mean,
if the real estate prices mean anything, then holy cow! It's
I mean, the Colonial
crazy.
Theater, to see like that, finished in some capacity, right? Maybe the facade, the big. You look at the old pictures. I mean, being a government politics history guy, I mean, like that would be so cool. My dad used to tell me about, and I'm sure your dad could probably think back to it too, like matinees on Saturdays, like for 10 cents or whatever. I'm not saying like obviously prices have inflated a little bit. I'm not saying we're be giving away $10 features here, but like just as a space, just as a complex or a facility.
And it goes back to what you said. We want to give kids options, whether it's athletically or at Cony, or people options within the community, whether it's doing judo at the rec, or it's going to a play, or it's going downtown to eat, or the rail trail. There's just so many things now that, like, I bristle a little bit at some of my buddies that have left, not from Augusta, but people I knew in Portland, like, oh, you're from Augusta. Ugh. Like, why would you? Yeah, you're going back to Augusta. And I was like, hey,
it's
on
the
rise. Great place
to
live. I think the education and the opportunities that my sons have been afforded are, the same as that I was, and I felt really fortunate to go through, the system here in Augusta, so to speak. So I think it's a great place to live and raise a family. And the real estate prices are now reaching, the Brunswick level, and now quite Portland. So like, who knows who's moving in? But apparently people with some money. So
hopefully,
that'd be nice. So it's a great place, and I just feel lucky to be a part of it.
Likewise, BL. I couldn't echo that enough. Like I said, I did the same thing, was away for a little bit, came back, and it's always been there. It's not, it's not always, the prettiest to look at, but if you want something to be pretty, you got to put some work into it too.
Right, yeah.
Like it's easy to sit back and moan, but to actually get involved, like you and I are, to try to benefit this place for the better, to try to make better students, better members of the community, and hopefully, encouraging a few of them to hang around, stay, because they're the future,
no doubt.
future leaders.
No doubt about
it. BL, thank you so much for coming on today. Appreciate it. Without a doubt. I mean, it's like it's good to get some different insight, because again, you're a little bit younger than some of the other folks that I've talked with.
I'm glad to hear that. I just turned 40. I feel like an old man, so I'm glad to hear that.
But no, it's good to get some different perspective, as we talked about. It really cool to sit and talk with you today. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I
Greatly
knew
appreciate
we
it.
wouldn't struggle for words.
No.
You and I both can talk for a while. So
Till
I
the
knew
cows. I think the cows have officially come
it
home.
wouldn't be a lot of dead air. So I appreciate you having me on, and hope this venture goes well for you.
Yeah,
Certainly,
much appreciated.
Excited for you.
Yeah, thank you, BL. Appreciate that. So I'll be back here, guys, on the 31st with episode 9. In the meantime, though, continue to have a great summer. Fall's just around the corner, folks. Continue to check us out on social media at DuView207 on Instagram and the DuView podcast everywhere else. Be sure to tune in for our next episode, guys, and we'll see you next time.